one production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.
Okay, we're about ready to start. I wanted to wait a minute to let our guests sign in. I'm Jean Totten, secretary for this board and communications coordinator for the SAC. Hopefully everyone has signed in on a sheet, has a guest sheet, committee sheet. Please silence your phones. I never remember to tell you to put them back on, so try to remember. We would appreciate it today if our guests would please refrain from commenting. We will be having town halls, and you'll have every opportunity to make comments. And if I can remind the committee that when you're on the other end, is anybody on the other end? Mm-hmm. It is extremely hard to hear. It is extremely hard to hear when even just one or two of you is conversing among yourselves. Because I sat there and I can verify that. I think it probably might be a good idea for everyone to introduce themselves.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Pardon me?
Committee or whole room?
Oh, the committee. I'm sorry. The committee. I think we probably eat up 15 minutes.
John Fast, committee co-chair.
Jim Stefano, representing mini golf.
Paul Higgins.
Anita Borski.
Dave Clausen, representing tennis.
Scott Harrington, water volleyball.
Jeff Darvitt, co-chair.
Bill Loslow, Performing Arts.
Ed Werdeman, representing dance clubs.
Russ Toman.
Norm Dixon at large.
I'm a guest.
Chat Chatterjee, I'm here because my wife is in Seattle.
Dan Haverman, pickleball.
Susan Ewan, Aqua Fitness.
Bruce Halverson, Sundown Men's Club.
Marlene Immersian Architects.
Stacia Ledesma with Immersian Architects.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have the...
I do, please.
And I think you needed a microphone the last time.
I can talk pretty loud. What do you think?
No, it's up to the
Yes.
group, Mike.
Okay.
Mike is good.
Having been on the other end last week, she needs the microphone.
Okay.
Is this?
Here's one.
That button there.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you on a Friday. And isn't it nice we got some rain?
Yes.
Yeah? Pretty amazing.
There we go.
Okay. This is better?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Today we are talking about the Lakeview site. We're going to quickly go through what we accomplished last week and then focus on the Lakeview priorities. It's important for me to reiterate, we are not making final decisions today. The goal is for us to hear from you what the priorities are and if there are some order of priorities, which went quite well last week. Next. So I want to show you kind of the way that we're headed right now. The key thing for any long-term owner of a property is to develop the overall mission for the property itself. What's important about this is that we establish what's the overall density of use, new construction that would be planned for, and then how does that relate to both parking, utilities, and support. The key thing is we're going to be not only showing what is the immediate priority, but what would be the long-term vision for your site? And by the way, I know this is not your site. This is just an example to show you for a very large, relatively large site. This master plan developed a strategy for where the new construction is going to go, what buildings would be renovated, what are areas that could be demolished for future construction, and then what would be the areas to keep unchanged. That's these buildings here. And then how does that relate to required parking and services? The key for a plan like this is that that is a guideline so that as you develop your funding and the commitment to the site, if we're going to have a new building here and a new building here, when we plan for the utilities to come in here, they are planned to serve the ultimate planned capacity of the site. So you don't go through and redo things that if done the first time with good planning is much more cost effective, okay? So that's kind of where we're headed right now in terms of this initial effort. Next. So we are right now at our second meeting, so we're almost done. Okay. Thanks for laughing.
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty excited.
So we went through Mountain View priorities. I want to tell you all, it was very, very helpful and very informative last week. Today we are going to focus on Lakeview. And I want to explain again, we have a very highly expedited schedule, and the purpose is really to establish goals. We're not going to have the final schemes. We're going to have the goals and the mission for the priority for new construction. After this meeting today, next we'll go through and show you some potential fit tests regarding each site based on the priorities we go through today and last week. Get your feedback on that, and then finalize the priority of work that you want and the overall improvement for each site by this September 15th date, because then we want to go to the board, we've been told, by September 28th with the overall idea about development and improvements for these two sites and the preliminary idea about the phase 1 construction and improvements that would be proposed. Okay? Any questions on this? Next. We went through a great process prioritizing what's a must-have, likes-have, and could-have priorities for last week. Next. And so here's where we are right now on Mountain View. That Mountain View is to retain an outdoor spa, the horseshoe area, the mini golf, the lawn bowling. The fitness center is too small. Ideally, it would be about double the size of what it is right now. Pickleball is 12 minimum with 14 preferred and 50% of that shaded and vented, which could at some point later be enclosed if that is desired. And then swimming to be modified to have a resort aqua fitness pool, and then a lab sport pool, and then 2 tennis courts. Priorities for the community, locations to be established is a performing arts center with 300 seats minimum, the stage, dressing rooms, a green room, a small rehearsal space, and storage for equipment that would typically be for a performing arts center. The multi-purpose activity space was not essential, it was an option, so that'll be something we'll look at as what an option might be. Next. So today we talk about Lakeview. Lakeview has a wonderful feature for the lake. The last time we were here, the lake was dry, but
It still is.
but it's a fantastic feature. And so part of what's happening on this campus is that not everything is optimizing that wonderful lake exposure. That's one thing we'll talk to you about. This campus is unusual in that it is 2 properties. This is a separate property from this property. It is all owned by the recreation centers, but there's a property line in 2 different use types. This is C2 and this is R. Do we have a slide of that?
Next one.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is the one parcel and this is the second parcel. This is a highly unusual parcel boundary. I don't think I've ever seen one like this, actually so complicated. There must have been a reason to do that at the time, but this is in fact the parcel boundary. And what that means is that 2 of these tennis courts are on this parcel and 2 are on this parcel. Okay?
Wow.
They are 2 separate zoning assignments. This is C2, that's commercial, and this is residential. Residential is almost all over Sun City. The county, just so you understand, you don't have to know the details, but the county residential assignment allows for all your community uses, etc. So it's not limited, you're not limited into what you can do. But this property boundary means that ideally, nothing should be crossing the property boundary. Officially, if you're a single owner, you can in fact cross your boundary. When we're in a planning session like this, I typically recommend that it's not a fundamental criteria or aspect of your scheme because it can lead to later issues. Because primarily, these are 2 different zoning properties. So ideally, right now, we would not be crossing any construction over that property boundary. Okay?
That's a good start.
Yeah? Okay? Are there any questions on that, what I'm explaining?
If you have all those limitations, where are you going to put a performing arts center?
I've got it figured out, don't worry.
I'm worried.
Okay, well, I shouldn't say it like that. But I don't think that, once we get through what the priorities are, then we'll take a look at what has to remain and establish the optimum way to locate things on your site. Okay? That make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think what you're saying is we're special.
Yes.
We've never seen this before.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing I'm telling you guys is that this kind of a property boundary is highly unusual in an open site. I mean, your site is not dense, so the reason for that, I can't determine. It must have been based on something some time ago, is what I'm thinking, okay? But it's a reality, and the key thing for us in terms of simplification for you is to not build in options that make that required to be changed if possible, okay? Because changing that C2 zoning for an existing building is, has other problems. Okay? Okay, next. Okay, so the outdoor activity right now at Lakeview is the swimming pool, which is in the middle of the building area. There are 4 tennis courts. Remember, 2 of these are on one property and 2 on the other property, okay? There are 12 shuffleboard courts. There is 2 lawn bowling greens, and then a mini golf. Okay? Next. There is quite a bit of parking, relatively speaking. You are not low on parking for what's required. The parking for this site is separately established for that C2 zoning for that building, okay? So we're looking at the overall for the activity building site, which is well within what's required. Next. The overall pedestrian circulation goes to the building. You can walk around the building, obviously, and connect to the tennis courts. One of our observations going out there with this, beautiful site is that there's things we can do no matter which scheme we do that can really help focus activity along that beautiful lake amenity right now, which right now there's not a lot of amenities here that are connected to that pedestrian circulation. Next. So here's the use data we were given for Lakeview. These are, I guess, the most current right here. So the billiards is being used, lake activities, fitness is a little bit down from January. The mini golf going down, it might be because in January it was cooler, and in May, not so cool, right? Okay, so then swimming pool, very high. And then the indoor spa going down, tennis courts, fairly low overall, and then walkers.
Our snowbirds also left.
They left?
That's what's down.
And they're coming back, right?
Always.
Like next week? Something like that? Okay, next. Okay, and then this is your existing building, which has a lot of nice characteristics. It is, I think, for us, there's some characteristics that can be quite easily improved to make the experience better. It is an aged building, but it is in general, it appears to be in generally good condition. And so there is a lot that can be done to upgrade this facility if that's one of the things that becomes an option that makes sense. So if you don't know how to read a floor plan, folks, this is the overhang on the first floor. And this is where, this is the pool on the first floor, and this is the walk area. Next. So when you come up to the facility, there is this main entrance point right here, shaded walk area. Next. And these entrance points going in. Some of the key things here is, again, once you're outside in that shaded area, there's not a lot of activities to connect to the space. So it's really, designed right now like an isolated volume that has some nice potential, but not really connected that strongly to outside activities. Would you guys agree?
I agree.
Okay. Next. It is accessible. These are obviously the way that you get through to the middle. Next. And this is a pretty good sized way to walk around the facility. There's been some improvements. There's the way that some of the elements are designed are fairly utilitarian. And so there's also potential to actually provide some connectivity even with changing doors, changing glazing, so there's more connectivity to exterior daylight between activities if that's something that is appropriate for what you decide you want to focus on for this building. Next. Nice shade areas around the pool. Next. And this is looking out to the one place that kind of connects over towards the lake. But again, it's quite modest. Next. And here we are, and that's a fantastic feature. Like when? Like next week? When's that gonna happen?
That's plastic example.
End of October.
October? Okay, pretty soon. So again, but this is a wonderful feature, right? And so one thing, no matter what, we can help, I think, suggest is some ways that that feature starts driving some really nice activities even outside, even if it means just some site improvements that allow for that amenity to be more featured. Next. Here's the fitness area. All these functions within this building are within a fairly tight dimension. And so one thing we'll talk to you about, depending on the priority for fitness, is there ways that we can optimize the proportion, if that's a priority for you, and how would that be done? Next. Again, all the spaces are highly constrained by this dimension. That's typical around the whole building. And so part of what we want to hear from you is what, based on the use priorities, not establishing where, use priorities, then how can we look at what you have and how that can be most cost effectively accommodated. Next. There is no production kitchen. Our understanding is there will be no production kitchen on this site. And so this is a modest kitchen, and it's not for real like group cooking. It's not designed that way, and the facilities are not like that. Next. And so here's the overall. This is supposed to be blue. It's not a putting green. I don't know. Does it really look green sometimes?
Yeah.
I guess, right? Anyway, when it goes blue, it's going to be awesome. Okay? And so, yes, it will be awesome. Okay, let's go to the next one.
It's the end. 23F, 23.
Next slide.
There is no next slide.
Oh, that's it? Okay, we're going to stop there. Okay, so let's talk about, if we went to the 2 slides back to the uses. 3, 4, keep going. Did I see 2? Stop. Okay, yes.
So similar to what we had at Mountain View, there's some missing activities up there. There are two that I can see right away, shuffleboard and lawn mowing.
Okay,
So there may be others.
okay. All right, so let's start. Let's start with these, okay? Let's start with mini golf if we could, okay? Mini golf is there, right? Okay. Mini golf, is that staying?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Speak up.
I hear yes. Mini golf, we're keeping mini golf, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay. All right, then, let's talk about the swimming pool. It's a great swimming pool. Obviously, it's unique, it's a feature, okay? I would assume, tell me now, are we keeping the swimming pool?
Yes.
We're not talking about location of the swimming pool.
I am. I'm talking about the swimming pool
You
in
wanna
the
keep-
middle of the
So you're
building.
saying, the question is, do you want to keep that round pool inside the round building?
Correct,
We haven't ever discussed that.
yes.
I'd like to comment,
Yes,
well, Marlene, just, I think a little background that round pool lent well at one time to what was a aqua dance exercise where people used to do, you could look from the top level down and watch people do dance in the pool. I don't know how to describe it.
Synchronized swimming.
Synchronized swimming. Yep.
I still do synchronized swimming?
Yeah. Not anymore.
And, well, synchronized swimming was part of the swim club, but over the past few years, there wasn't adequate attendance and they disbanded. So it's a synchronized swimming concept that fits with a round pool with an upper deck to watch people. That no longer is applicable.
thank you, Steve. So it is a nice sized pool, and so for general use, it's nicely sized. So would we, if we can provide right now an initial assessment for that to be kept rather than removed, would that be enjoyed? Yes.
Well, I don't believe we've talked about alternatives type pools for that area. And if we don't talk about alternatives, then it's a little difficult to decide whether or not you want to keep that.
So that's a single general use pool. Okay,
They've got laps in it.
what's that?
They use lap. It's got lanes in it. It's-
They got swimming lanes in it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's not ideal for laps because it's a different size on each lane.
Yeah.
no, totally understood. So as a general pool, for general use, is that a nice pool for the general use?
Yes.
Okay,
No, I don't believe it is, because what you have to look at, you have to look down the road, the big picture. What could we do to make Lakeview a much more attractive center when we have the only lake in the valley for a retirement community, and we've hidden it for 60-some years? So, I think it's time to bring the lake out, and I know you're talking about remodeling, but I don't understand how you could take a round building, which the major drawback on making rooms bigger in there, we've had requests for the last 20-some years, the only way you can make a room bigger in that configuration is to make it long and narrow.
Rectangle.
You can't make it wider unless you make some structural changes. So you have a pool that does not fit its original design anymore. It's surrounded by a building and nobody watches people swim. The rooms can only be made longer, they can't be made in a different configuration for different purposes. So I just am of the opinion that if we want to use that lake to its full potential, we can have a great marketing thing there that no other retirement community, no matter how many chrome things and whistles and bells they put in, they are not going to have a lake in their community center for all practical purposes. So I think we must magnify that use.
That's another one.
And I don't think you can do it with a round building and a round pool.
Okay, so let me start from some basics, which is another goal that you're talking about, which is lake activity focus, okay?
Lake, using it for marketing.
Okay, so that means that the way the lake is related to the functions in any building around it are connected, which they are not right now.
That's correct. They're not doing, in fact, they're going against it.
Yeah, understood. Okay. So if you would allow me to just right now not make a decision about the building itself, just about the pool, for a general use pool, it's a pretty nice size for just a general use pool,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
I don't know how you can keep the pool and not do something with the building.
Because I can do both.
If you have a pool surrounded by a building and you get rid of the pool, it just, this is all intertwined. I don't know how you can talk about one and not talk about.
So right now, what we're doing is we're talking about the overall goals for function. And if you'd allow us to do that separately without proposing the specific building changes, that's what I'm talking about. Because knowing that the pool in general of its size works, doesn't mean that that's going to limit what we propose to do with that building.
You're asking me to have faith, I will have faith.
What's that?
I will have faith.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, go for it.
Okay, so what I've heard is that I'm not saying that the pool has to stay, okay? Nobody's told me the pool has to stay. What I'm hearing is that the pool right now for general use is okay for its size and general function. Now, what's missing is a lap pool. Is that correct?
Well, no, we use it as a lap pool.
No, I know, but it's not a lap pool.
No, it's not.
Okay.
A separate lab.
Yeah, so what's missing? Okay, so is a lap pool important to be considered for Lakeview?
No.
No,
If we have another one somewhere else.
no.
You got them at Bell and you're gonna have them at Mount.
So I hear,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'd like to come,
Steve,
We don't need another one.
I'd like to comment on that, Marlene.
go ahead, Steve.
The swim team does use Lakeview during half of the year for swim lessons. There is swim training that goes on, so a lap pool would be helpful or appropriate. However, this is where I think the consideration of Mountain View and Lakeview are tied together. Because if you recall last week, we did indicate a sports pool that accommodated lap and volleyball would be mutually appropriate. If you have a lap pool at Mountain View, and you could use that, then you may not need a lap pool at Lakeview for the same swim training purposes.
Okay, so what if we, thank you, Steve. Okay, so what if we say this? A lap pool is important to be either located at Mountain View or Lakeview. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, let's talk about lawn bowling. Lawn bowling is taking a lot of real estate. Do you love it?
I don't think, this is not, you may not know this, but we are recognized in Sun City as the best lawn bowling location in the world, not just America, in the world. We have international lawn bowling competitions here with Australians, Canadians, South Africans, British coming here to lawn bowl.
It's
Okay.
important.
Yeah, so that's good. So the question is that lawn bowling important to remain?
Yes.
yes,
Okay,
Yes.
we figured that.
I guess the question is do we have the activity usage? I think there's 5 lawn bowling courts. Do we need 5 in the community, even to keep the world-class?
There's more than that.
There's 7, I'm sorry, thank you. Do we need 7 to meet those requirements?
Actually, we need 4 more.
For their players' club.
We'll put it in place of the
In answer to Jeff's question, lawn bowling is second in outside activity only to pickleball.
Correct.
Okay, so right now, as of this preliminary evaluation, again, remember, this is not the end, but we're making the preliminary priorities for us to help do an initial study of how things could fit in these two sites. What I've heard is lawn bowling is to remain. Is that an appropriate initial assumption, guys
Yes.
and gals?
Yeah, no.
People?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
I'd be a little suspect on some of these numbers because if you look at January, it says rowboat, pedal boat, fishing. We didn't have a lake.
I don't know where these came from. You know, what I'm using this right now as you can tell, this is not driving our decisions. This is just information, right? Because I'm not leaving anything out.
We don't know what year those are from either.
So it's interesting what you just said. I'm assuming we are not having a boathouse. Correct? We're not providing those facilities.
We don't have one.
Okay. Yeah, so the fact that someone has one and they're out there, someone has a pedal boat or a rowboat, that's fine, has actually no impact right now. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay? The only impact it'll have in a few minutes when I talk to you about it is, does anybody actually come to this site from the water? Or does most people drive to this site?
They leave this site to go on the water.
Okay.
They drive to the
They drive here, they put their paddle board on the, yeah, okay, yes.
I'm hearing you say they're using their own boats. We have boats for rental, both paddle boats and pontoon boats. So they can rent those.
And where is that?
It's great.
Yeah, it's great, it's on the pier.
If you bring up the,
It's not there
You
right now.
can't see that, there's nothing on the lake on your drawing.
The lake's empty.
Yeah, the lake's in. You can't see it. It's not on your
The
drawing.
point is you drive there and then you use the lake.
Go back to
Wait a
the picture
second.
with the green lake.
Wait a
Go
second.
to your overhead view.
go to the picture of the.
Go to the overhead,
Stacy's gonna draw it. Okay, let's go to the overhead.
I think I got on the Google view.
You go in there.
There we go.
It's right.
Okay, see? Right there.
Right there.
It's the, yeah, so.
There's a building between it
This is the
and
rental.
Zoom in.
Can you zoom in, then you'll see it.
Okay, so guys, does this have boats in it?
No.
No,
It's all on the water.
It's on the water.
it's on the water.
Look at
Okay,
the
so
green.
they're just parked on some sort of pier on the water.
There's a dock there.
Yeah, there used to be a dock. Do we get to design the dock? No.
There's also access way over to your right where people bring their own
Yeah, on that road.
kayaks.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Okay, that's good. You can just write it right on there. That is boat dock access, right? Okay. Okay, then let's talk about the indoor spa. Okay, it's quite small. It's restricted. Okay, so tell me, some of you have never used it? Yes.
Yeah, I think it's fine, it's a little dated. Some of the
Just a
tiles-
little.
Yeah, the tiles are, I guess the other thing is to note, like all of Sun City is utilitarian. There's actually no aesthetic appeal.
If you're looking at numbers, the indoor spas are not used near as much as the outdoor spas.
Okay, so can we say that the indoor spa is not required to be retained?
Correct.
Thank you.
Or should we clarify the indoor versus outdoor spa?
The indoor
So what I'm
spa,
saying is that the indoor spa is not required to be retained.
Correct.
not if there's an outdoor spa.
And then the second thing is that an outdoor spa is desired,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And the function of the outdoor spa, folks, we're talking about not huge, right? We're talking about heated, okay? And so that would be 5 to 6 people, not 30.
Correct.
I think you need to look at the numbers to decide that. So some of the outdoor spas that are used, how much at one time, I don't know, but if you add up the total, it's significant.
Phil's got a good size outdoor spa. And that holds more than 6 people.
Should we start with, like a modest spa and then see what we can fit in?
Yes,
That's good.
Okay.
that's right.
Like 10.
It says 6.
They're the biggest in Lansing.
What's that?
You guys,
I'd start with
you got a lot of
the biggest.
conversations going on between people online that can't hear.
It's better if we start with the minimum. What would be the minimum acceptable? And then if there's a desire, if you say, really at Lakeview, we prefer the biggest size spa, I would like to hear that from you too. Yes.
Judging from Bell, I would figure that your minimum would have to be somewhere around 20, and if you can go bigger than that, it's probably better. But that's just my observation.
Thoughts?
I agree with that.
I have a little concern that maybe it's not comparable. We don't get as many members using Lakeview Center as we do Bell. Bell is like #1 in terms of fitness, swimming, and walking pool and so forth. So a big spa makes sense there, but I'm not sure that it would apply to the Lakeview.
Okay, and we're guessing, but
Yeah.
in the case of Fairway,
Yeah.
all of the numbers went up when they had a new center that looked good and they're proud of and everything else. So, we've used this phrase before, build it and they will come.
Yep.
And I think the smaller numbers at Lakeview are more due to the age of the facility and functionality of the facility. So, but we're guessing, we don't know.
No, that's agreed, good point.
Okay, so for today, we're going to say that a spa is a need and must be included, exterior, okay? And then right now, the minimum we're showing is 8, and we'll look at options for larger, if that can be accommodated based on the overall goals. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, then let's talk about tennis.
He has a point you also.
Oh, Steve, sorry. Steve, you can just yell out.
Yeah, I'm trying not to interrupt, but the thought comes to mind, Marlene, that selecting the size of a spa and a pool might have something, and back to Jeff, I think it was Jeff was talking about, Bell has more activity from a spa standpoint because it has more pools, it's got a walking pool and a lap pool, but some of this demand or use may have something to do with a facility's aesthetics. So back to some of Norm's points, I don't think, and you even pointed out, if you have a lake here, you have an opportunity for aesthetics that might draw people here other than just for the sports functionality. So setting a size of a spa or a pool without addressing how you might use the aesthetic value of the property might be premature, if I may.
So let me talk about that a little bit then, Steve. So in terms of the spa, for me, I would not be limited to saying that a spa location needs to be traditional in terms of being, for instance, even right next to the pool. Like, could there be a water feature, for instance, that is related to the lake, which is, I think, where you're headed, okay? And so,
You're right on.
okay, so please, everybody understand, we are not looking for, as we look at this after today, we're not going to look at what is the easiest, simple copy approach to do your project. That's not what we're looking at. What we're going to do is look at what could be some optional ways that we could do it, so we can propose a scheme, kind of an overall layout of the site that could optimize what the features are. Okay? And I think the idea about A spa being an activity zone with other things that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes could also be something that's located outside if we decide to keep the existing building. It doesn't have to be next to the existing pool, etc. Does that make sense to you all?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Steve, did I answer your concern?
Thank you. That was right on target. Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk about tennis. 4 tennis courts, right?
Let me make a comment first here. Is that those numbers, we've acknowledged before that tennis courts are not playable. Very, very few people play on them because they need repair. So these numbers aren't indicative, so we don't want to have data-driven decision based on this data because those courts are, nobody plays there. Well, there are a few obviously that try it and then they don't come back.
Yeah, so it's a problem when your balls like don't bounce.
Yeah, well, or even over the cracks. Yeah. So that's just a point. But the tennis community, like pickleball, would like to have tennis courts more than in just one spot in Sun City.
Okay.
And so we've got, at the present time, we've got 2 at the south side at Mountain View that we could set aside, not a final decision, but we've got it there. We would want to have tennis courts, one or the other. And we would love them both places, but...
So right now, tennis was a to-keep item at Mountain View.
Right.
Not a, no?
Well,
That's where we were.
Yeah,
That's where we were.
last
You
week.
can,
Yeah.
yes.
But it depends on what pickleball requirements are and what Mountain View final...
Understood. We don't have to go there yet.
But we would want to have tennis in one of those 2. We don't want just tennis at Bell Center, as good as it is.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If the tennis courts at Mountain View are retained, do you want tennis courts to be part of the primary component to be here at Lakeview?
Yes. I don't think so.
I would, but
I'd say no.
It depends on the number of tennis courts at Mountain View.
yeah.
How many do we
2 at
have?
Mountain View. 2 at Mountain View. I don't know. I don't know that I can speak for the whole tennis community, but I would say I would like to have it at both places, but if I had to choose.
You don't have to choose right now. So I'm asking optimally, okay? Should we plan for retaining 2 tennis courts at Lakeview?
My answer would be yes.
Yes.
My answer would be yes.
We keep talking about things being data-driven. And particularly, this gets really hard because I can tell by some of the comments that are being made that I think there's some just animosity against pickleball, regardless of what the data is going to show or what the numbers show. And so that makes it kind of difficult. The data has been shown to this committee that we're talking about the fastest growing sport in America. He has mentioned that it is the #1 used thing in the #1 activity. And yet, well, I want to know where the data would be to have tennis courts in 3 locations. I don't have anything against tennis. I just want to know, we're supposed to be a data-driven committee. Where would be the data that would show that we need tennis courts in 3 locations?
So can I just speak to that for a minute? Data is very good, but sometimes it's limited. Okay, so right now, what I'd like to hear in terms of goals is there a potential that there could be a site without tennis? That's all I'm asking, okay?
Yes,
Yes, there could.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, and so the idea would be, is tennis mandatory at Lakeview? Or could it be an option to retain 2 if the rest of the primary goals could be accomplished and still retain 2 tennis courts? That would be one way we could look at it. Yes?
There is a lot of experience, if not data, that if you do not maintain the facilities, people stop going to it. regardless of what the activity is. And that's what's being said now, is that Lakeview has been in bad shape for tennis facilities for as long as I can remember, and my memory's getting shorter as I get older, but it's still a long time. And there's no doubt that pickleball is a growing sport, and I've said that over and over in these meetings. But I think my aspect is I look at the bigger picture than what we're looking at now and what we've been looking at for the last umpteen meetings. We have to compete with other retirement communities in order to attract new people to buy the houses. If they don't buy the houses, we go on a declining pattern. If they don't buy the houses, we don't get any PIF money, which is the restricted money that we can spend to build new buildings. We have advantages that the other communities do not have, and I've gone through them before, and the committee members are well aware of those. One of those is that we have all of these centers. We have 7 centers, and that turns out to be basically local centers, just like the local elementary school. People can walk to them. You have these facilities. You have a choice between going to one or to the other. The other communities can't have that. We have 4 major advantages. I don't believe we can ever get in the position of weakening any of those 4 advantages. And to have tennis at each of those is an advantage of selling homes and attracting people. So that's my statement. And I'm going to keep coming back to it until you throw up.
I'm not close to that, don't worry. Karen, did you have something you wanted to say? Karen, go ahead.
Yes, I do. So I would completely agree with Dave about the fact that the data that we have at Lakeview right now is not supportive of any kind of a decision at all, because the courts are in such lousy condition that they're not really very playable. However, we have 10 beautifully done tennis courts at Bell that have recently been redone, and everyone raves about that. So presumably the data that we have from Bell would be a very accurate reflection of how much use actually takes place within the tennis club. So I would encourage us to let's compare what we have, what we see at Bell, whether we see excess capacity, whether we see that is it oversubscribed, is it undersubscribed, is there any justification for building courts anywhere else based on the data that we have at Bell? And I think that that's probably the direction we need to go. You know, looking at how many people have used Mountain View or how many people have used Lakeview, it's not really an adequate array of data to make a decision on that. But we do need to look at where we do have beautiful courts that are in excellent condition and to find out, are they really not adequate to serve the needs of a club that has shown 0 growth over the last 10 years?
Okay, so thank you, Karen.
Steve had a comment also. I don't know where.
Hey, Steve, did you want to speak out?
Yeah, just 2 quick points. One is on Norm's point about the tennis courts use at Lakeview. As something declines in terms of its capabilities, such as the tennis courts at Lakeview, you get less people using it. And this, I think, was addressed in the special meeting yesterday, okay, what we're behind on in terms of maintenance. Secondly, I think if we're going to be looking at where you're going to place certain amenities, let's just keep in mind, Mountain View, you have about 5.5 square acres, and in Lakeview, you have over 11, so almost twice as much as Lakeview. So, you know, maybe just keep in mind the size of the properties, and therefore you just can't have everything you want at every property.
Okay, I'm going to suggest this. Can we table the tennis decision right now and talk about pickleball? Okay?
Sure.
So
We
is
already have table tennis.
Can I ask about table tennis? Okay.
We want to go to your house and do the actual court.
Okay, so pickleball, is that something that needs to be considered for this site?
I would say yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Okay, so who would like to, who strongly thinks that pickleball needs to be added to the Lakeview site?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. Are you going to,
You don't have to decide where it's going to go. We're not looking for trade-offs right now. That's what you're going to, right?
I need a certain number of courts, so I guess, okay, all right, I'll come with you.
So right now, what I want to know, there's no pickleball here.
Right.
Not officially. If you're doing it, I don't know how, okay? So my question is it important that this site has any pickleball? That's my first question.
No.
Yes.
Okay, so it's the first time there's any disagreement. Okay, so who thinks it's really important that there is some pickleball at the Lakeview site? And please, yes. Dan?
Oh, I thought you were just asking.
I'm asking now, I want you to tell me.
I'm sorry.
Explain your point of view.
Well, I mean, we just got through being told that we need, that for people to come, we need tennis in 3 locations. And Karen just brought up the data shows that it's a declining sport. We've got pickleball, which has been proven to be a sport on the incline. So I don't understand why it wouldn't make sense to have a sport that's increasing in all 3 locations.
So is a location important for the pickleball commitment? Because right now, one of the primary goals for Mountain View was 14 pickleball courts, guys. People.
And that's not enough.
Yes.
I understand that the pickleball club is interested in 2 facilities that have 20 or so courts, so that they would facilitate the usage that they envision. I think that, like Norm was saying, pickleball facilities in more than 2 places is a good selling point for Sun City. I think it is. I think that neighborhood recreation center with more. When I did my presentation some weeks ago, I had identified what I considered reasonable things, reasonable locations inside Sun City where we could build pickleball courts so that we could have community pickleball. When I have my grandkids here, they want to play pickleball, and I'm a tennis player, but they like to pickleball. I'll play pickleball, but I don't want to have to necessarily go out to Marinette to do it. So I support pickleball in more than 2 places.
Okay, so right now, one of the goals for Mountain View is pickleball. So there will be pickleball significantly at Mountain View.
Yeah.
So now, as of the last goals.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we can answer that question.
I can answer it.
We would like it to be there, but we're kind of at a point right now where we need to know where the theater's going.
Well,
So once we find out where that is, we'll know how much space we have left over to do pickleball or tennis or whatever.
Okay, so right now, if you just allow me to go through this in terms of the goals, so that we can take a look at what could be fit and how appropriate, it could be in terms of the land use, okay? So bear with me. I know that you're thinking that there's not enough room for all this stuff, but right now, we're not at that point, okay? What is really important for us is before we make a decision about what fits, what's the priority? And then we can always have the things that are like to have, not priority, okay? So what I'm hearing is tennis. Is it a priority that there has to be 2 tennis courts at least at Lakeview?
Yes.
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 Okay. Let's start there.
That was Karen.
That was Karen.
And Steve sounds.
Can you get that?
Who said no?
Karen.
I want to second that.
Steve? Yeah, I don't understand why that conclusion was made.
It was a question, and I was looking at the nodding heads. Okay, so what I'd like to know is who would disagree that, or who would say that at Lakeview, the overall plan for use could not include any tennis court,
No tennis court.
no tennis courts.
Karen's hands up too.
Aaron.
Steve.
Okay. And then who here would be highly object to a scheme that did not allow space for at least 2 tennis courts? Okay.
Could you repeat that?
I asked who, is there a group that, are there individuals on the committee that would object to an overall campus plan that did not include at least 2 tennis courts?
Wait, there's double negative there. Could you please clarify that? So you disagree that there not being things, so I'm not sure what the question is, and I think this is a pretty important one.
So the question is there a minimum criteria for Lakeview to have 2 tennis courts?
The Lakeview or Mountain View?
Lakeview is what we're talking about.
I say no.
Yes.
Yes.
I say there's no reason for tennis at Lakeview.
So to the 4 of you that object, okay?
1, 2.
No, that object to not having tennis at Lakeview, could that be an option? Did I get that wrong?
Yes.
We object to not, no, we were voting to have tennis at Lakeview.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm saying the double
Okay, double
negative.
negative.
Double negative.
Okay. So for those of you who are of the point of view that tennis is a requirement for Lakeview with a minimum of 2 tennis courts, can that be considered an optional scheme, or does that need to be an essential part of the Lakeview plan, depending on what fits?
Let me make an observation before we vote. I believe, like, that it's either or. I don't think we have to have tennis courts. I think it would be valuable, in my view, to have tennis courts at both. But I think it's essential, in my view, to have tennis courts at either court.
Yes, there will be tennis courts at Mountain View.
Well, that hasn't been a final decision.
There's no final decisions, but as of today,
And so,
at whatever time it is, right now, one of the priorities for Mountain View is to have a certain number of tennis courts.
so the question is, if we
That's how we should say it. If there's,
if we have tennis courts at Mountain View,
Mhm.
do you think it's essential? Is it essential to have tennis courts at Lakeview? I would vote no. If we have tennis courts.
okay, is there general agreement on that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a no.
Is it a no for the no?
No tennis.
Yes.
Yes, there are no bananas.
I don't chime in, but I wanted to go back to your plot map. 2 of those tennis courts are on C2 plan.
Correct.
2 of them are on R1.
No, there are 6, I
Yeah,
think.
they're split. Yeah.
So if you can't repurpose all that land if you respect those boundaries. Is that correct?
No. I can repurpose outside activity. I just don't suggest we build
Okay.
right
Okay.
now
Very
on
good.
the C2,
Thanks for that clarification.
okay? It's a suggestion. Remember, folks, I'm going to use the word anything, a lot is possible. The key is, should we build in that kind of complexity? I don't think so. If we cannot build in the complexity that requires that lot change and the lot tie, it'll be better in the long run in terms of the timing for all you guys. Okay? People. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so now there is a gigantic pickleball commitment at Mountain View. Yeah, okay. A significant commitment for pickleball at Mountain View. Is pickleball a requirement to be included at Lakeview?
No.
No.
If
Could I make a comment here? So, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so, Marlene, I'm sorry, this is just really, really frustrating because any answer to a question about is, do we want to have this at Lakeview, is a little bit dependent on what we do elsewhere.
Yes.
So it's not really possible for us to say yes or no unless we're including it in a larger consideration. So just for your own information, in case you haven't heard this before, Pickleball actually made the statement that and brought forward data and proof to say that for a community our size, we should have around 75 pickleball courts. The pickleball club said we would be okay with reducing, we don't see that that's a possibility, but we would be okay with reducing that number to a total of 45. Okay, we have 20 at Marinette. So, when you ask the question, do we need them at Lakeview? Well, it depends. If we build 25 courts at Mountain View, then there's no need for pickleball courts anywhere else. So pickleball has also made very clear, and I think the members in the community and the committee know this, but I'm sort of saying this more for your benefit, that pickleball's preference is for those 45 courts to be split between 2 locations and not more than that. For internal club reasons, it would be much more attractive to pickleball to have 45 courts split into over 2 locations. So the statement, and I just want to come back to this, I don't know how we ended up with saying that it was okay to have 12 pickleball courts at Mountain View. But when the statement was made, the club requires a minimum of 12 courts. That was to refute the idea that we could put 3 courts here and 2 courts there and 4 courts there. So that doesn't work for pickleball. You need to have a minimum of 12 courts in any one location. But along with that is the idea that we need 25 more courts than what we have at Marinette. So, it just makes it really, really difficult to come up and say, so how, do we want them at Lakeview? Well, actually, that had been part of the old plan that was suspended by this board because we don't think that Lakeview is an ideal location for a noisy sport, not to mention the fact that it would require the club to be spread out over 3 different locations rather than over 2. So I guess I'm mystified by the idea that one person's statement that we really want to have tennis courts somewhere else other than Bell is just taken at face value and is, apparently is going to be implemented without having determined if the courts that we have are actually completely utilized. Whereas pickleball, which has proven incredibly high utilization rates, is being told, well, we just don't really, there's not enough of us that think that that's a good idea for pickleball. So, I come back to what Dan said here, and that's simply that if we want to be a data-driven community and we want to be forward-looking, we have to be thinking in terms of what is happening in the world that we live in. And that information has been presented. I think everybody knows. We get it in our bones that pickleball is not going to be declining at any time in the near future, for sure. So I guess I would just plead with you to please not forget that the Pickleball Club has made a very strong argument, and the fact that they're one person out of 20 on the committee should not mean that their voice is disregarded. I think all of us that are of goodwill and to believe that we ought to be making decisions based on reality and not just on, it would be really nice if we could, go to some places to play tennis. We need to keep that in mind. So I would plead with you to please not forget that. If we don't build a total of 45 courts, we are going to regret this 5 years from now when there is no place else to build additional courts, and we're stuck with one of the least provided for communities in the valley, and with an increasing number of people that are moving here that are playing pickleball before they come. So I don't want us to get into a situation where in 10 years, 5 years or 10 years, we say, oh my goodness, how could we not have seen this coming? We all should see it coming. Thank you.
I think we have to make decisions based on real data. And I think that, Karen, I'm going to challenge your extrapolation, because I can extrapolate those figures that you used to get 75 courts to say we need 3 more golf courses.
Okay, so then,
You can't just extrapolate. You have to look at your population, you have to look at your demographics, you have to look at the turnover, a whole variety of things, and to say that because we have so many rooftops and somebody else has so many rooftops is going to lead us to 12 golf courses and probably another 4 rec centers.
hey Karen,
Yes.
hey Karen, can we just hold 1 minute?
Yes, I just wanted to say that's the problem with the committee that we're having. We're trying to provide something for everybody, and we can't make anybody 100% happy. Norm would like his lawn bowling court, you would like tennis, Karen wants pickleball. We understand what everybody wants. We ran out of land. We can't make everybody happy in the land we have.
Yes, and so Karen, what I want to clarify, I'm not sure if there is a way that I've talked about it that has given you that impression, but then there has been a very, very large commitment to pickleball expansion at Mountain View that, relatively speaking, is very significant in terms of numbers and in terms of the site. And so what we're asking right now is based on the number that are going at Mountain View, is Lakeview an essential site for pickleball? And if you cannot make that decision right now, then we are going to go on and talk about a couple other things and then come back to pickleball. How about that? Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Now, let's talk about performing arts. Has anybody heard about performing arts?
Peoria.
You're talking about.
Okay. Right now, what we talked about last week was that the minimum criteria for performing arts was a 300. You want to bring that one card up?
When you first presented, you said 600. And
No, I
agreed
didn't
with
say. I said, what should it be?
you. And you said 600.
And you said
What we said, what we decided, what we,
But the point I'm making is so everybody understands, you're wanting everything grandiose for everything else. And John wants the wow factor. If you only have 300-seat theater, you're going to say, why in the world did we do this? Because it's not adequate today, and it's not going to be adequate in the future. So why build something that already is outdated?
Bill, I got to take exception to that. There is no number of Sun City members that use the current theater productions that the Players Club puts on that warrants a 600-seat theater. No, there's only 3,400 that attended in the last year, 34 the year before because of COVID. But all the theaters, nobody is recovering. There's nothing that warrants a big center.
And you're saying theater, I'm saying performing arts.
Same thing.
There's 9 other clubs that do. You talk to the dance people right here. You talk to the Coraliers and the Rhythm Ramblers and the orchestras and all that. And we've got 11 clubs that are going to be using that.
But currently those clubs' needs are being met in other facilities within the rec center's complex. So why should we build a new place and move them out of something that they're currently using?
Because of the seating.
okay, yes.
We're going back again to the same situation we had with tennis at Lakeview. Anybody who's been to the performances at Mountain View, 20 minutes and part of your anatomy is hurting because of those seats.
Okay,
So to use the data from that as saying people aren't interested in it, I think we've worn people out because they know what the seats are like, they don't want to come and sit in it. We don't know what it would be like if they had a comfortable seating situation.
Okay.
So I think we've got to make our comments based on what what is really there. And I don't have a dog in this fight.
So there was a strong consensus last week that the minimum auditorium performing arts center seating capacity would be 300 as a minimum.
I think that was not a strong sentiment, I think it was a compromise. But go ahead.
Okay, but that's part of what we're doing.
What the majority, I think is what the majority said.
I did say minimum,
You said
absolutely.
minimum last week too.
Correct.
So that's the minimum, that doesn't mean there can't be more.
Correct, yeah. So what we're saying is that we have to set some criteria, folks, for some overall site study. That's what we're doing right now. You are not making a final decision, okay? What we're doing is we have to establish some basis for establishing a study of the site. And so that was what was established last week, okay? And the idea was that it was not established where. It was established it had to be either at Mountain View or Lakeview. One. That's all I'm saying. Okay?
See, everybody has got the impression that pickleball has already got Mountain View. So you haven't made yourself very clear. Because each time you do this, you say, what is needed here? And you go through tennis, pickleball, swimming, everything, and performing arts is always last. It gets pitched out to the side.
So the only reason why I do performing arts last is I expect it to be the longest discussion. Okay? So I come from the theater back. I did a lot of theater in my old, like a while ago. How about that? Okay. So this is not coming from a disregard of theater at all. That is not what's happening. What we're trying to do is establish a way that together we can establish what are some initial goals. And remember, I have said, and I'm going to repeat, this is not the final decision. The key thing is for us to at least get the basics so we can have some reasonable initial study of site use that makes sense to you. Nobody thinks that this is going to be final and checked off with the first study, but we do need a basis for it that makes some sense. And the idea was that last week, the importance was that pickleball was in fact mandatory to be expanded at Mountain View. That was the one, when I say mandatory, I should not use that word, priority to show that it would fit, okay? And when we show that, if we go through the site plan and you all decide that there's compromises that are not acceptable, then of course that will be adjusted. We're trying to get to a minimal point, folks, that is a reasonable basis to do a site study. Because right when we started, there was there were too much that was up in the air. We have to have some minimal basis for how to start. And some of these things are optional, right? The idea was auditorium performance. I'm using the same, two different words, the same perception. We're talking about performance. We're talking about step seating, 300 seats, a stage, dressing room.
Backyard.
Okay? Yes.
Just as a comment to Jeff, you weren't here. Karen did an estimate and she determined that Performing Arts Center could be used at least 270 days out of the year.
She did, and a lot of those activities are just taking them from other auditoriums and moving them to a new place.
Yes, that's true.
But their requirements are already being met.
No, they're not.
For example, a board meeting was one of the things.
Right.
Well, a board meeting is quite satisfactory at the Sundial Center. We don't need to build a Performing Arts Center to hold a board meeting.
We can have
And
discussion.
you could go right down the list and do the same thing.
We'll discuss that later. We don't want to get to that now.
Tell me your first name again.
Anita.
Anita, okay, so what we discussed last week, and what I'd like to confirm today is, it was said last week that a new auditorium was essential to be located at one of the sites for consideration, okay? We have not decided where, okay? That'll be based on our site analysis, okay? That's important for us to help to study. But if we
Might
have...
change where pickleball goes.
We're not correct, okay? Those are some of the optional studies, okay? There's all kinds of things that can change depending on the way things could be laid out, parking requirements, etc., okay? So my question is right now, the auditorium is still not being removed. It was stated to be an essential component to be located at one or the other site. And by the way, I want to clarify that putting the auditorium on Lakeview, for all of you, does not mean that we're going to recommend that Mountain View facility be removed. Okay? So that is not the assumption either. We're going to look at optimizing uses based on the characteristics of the existing building. The best thing we can do in terms of your cost approach is to use what we have, if at all possible, if it can be optimized for a new use or improved. So nothing we're talking about right now says, I'm going to recommend we start over because it's just so much more fun. Okay? So none of that is going on right now. And by saying that this auditorium, which in my opinion actually has to be new construction, right, is going to mean that Mountain View gets taken down either. I just want to make that clear. Okay, so the auditorium criteria remains, and now I'm going to go back to my hardest subject, which is, do we need to say pickleball is mandatory at Lakeview if we have 14 courts, including covered, at Mountain View? Yes.
I think we need more than 14, and I think we need an indoor pickleball at Mountain View.
The Mountain View site is going to be done so that it can be indoor or outdoor. It depends on the cost. We can plan it so we can accommodate both. It's just a matter of optional cost. And it might be something that you don't build it now, but you do it later. You enclose it later. The structure can be done to allow that to be done later. Okay?
Balls.
What's that? Steve?
Steve.
What did you say?
Steve?
That was whoever is participating on the telephone.
I didn't do that. I didn't say that.
That was,
Okay. So then, everybody, is pickleball optional?
the phone.
Is there any essential criteria for pickleball to be at Lakeview?
You can be on the phone.
No.
There's
Steve?
You just, before said that you don't want to have a noisy thing at Lakeview. And then you're trying to put it
Steve?
Yeah, no, I'm not voting on that. Different comment, Marlene, when you're ready. I know you want to vote on the pickleball at Lakeview first, so I'm not voting for pickleball at Lakeview. I am with Dan and Karen on the fact that we said it should be at Mountain View. I'm still on Mountain View. I see no reason for it to go to Lakeview.
Thank you, Steve. Okay.
But I do have another comment when you're ready.
You do? Okay, run with it.
Surprise.
Okay.
Keep up with Norm.
Okay, Steve, it's all yours.
You can't keep up with an 85-year-old?
Okay, Steve.
Just that, I thought that we titled this session as priorities, and in my mind right now, Marlene, if we're just putting stuff on a board and saying these are the things that we want or believe we need at a certain location, is it possible to prioritize them, like number 1, number 2, number 3 at Mountain View, and then people have some idea, and you also in the planning stage when you're doing site planning have a better idea, well, okay, number 4 item at Mountain View is not going to fit. Now, see if it's worthwhile at Lakeview. I'm just having a little trouble with trying to put everything on the wall, see what sticks. And I think if we have a priority number ranked, that might help us all understand what might be more likely at one location versus another.
Okay, so then what we have essential is the lake activity, a general use pool, lawn bowling, a lap pool, mini golf, outdoor spa at Lakeview. That's what we have so far. So Steve, so Steve, right now, the thing about ranking is I think that there needs to be some viewing of what the implications are on site before I ask people to decide, because I'm going to come back with some implications, depending on what we're doing, about what the options could be. So there might be some options that involve changes to the building that would allow more changes, that would allow for that next decision to be have more knowledge to be made. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess you're saying we have to wait for ranking.
Yeah.
Well, right now, this ranking is pretty, it's not ranking, it's priority. So I use the word priority versus options, okay? And what I heard today, and you can stop me if that's incorrect, that the mini golf and the lawn bowling are to be retained. A lap pool is essential at Lakeview, correct?
I didn't hear that. I heard that a lap pool is best to have at one or the other, Mountain View or Lakeview.
Correct. Stacia's moving it, that's correct, that's what it says, at one site. And then an outdoor spa is desired to be added at Lakeview?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's a pretty good initial focus so far, Steve.
And the performing arts.
Okay.
And the decision...
And may I just point,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Marlene, may I just point out the things that you just mentioned there, the pool, the spa, the lawn bowling, and I forgot the fourth one. Those all can take advantage of the aesthetic value of Lakeview that aren't necessarily going to benefit from an aesthetic value of Mountain View.
That's right. Yeah, okay.
Okay, we got that.
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, so as a first pass for priorities, are we comfortable with where we are right now? If you want to, Stacia, do you want to kind of go through it?
You never put performing arts in the board.
It's right here.
There it is.
It's the biggest thing on the board.
Right there, above the lap pool.
Okay, good.
You're on number one board.
There you go.
So we have pickleball
Yes.
and tennis currently as priorities at Mountain View, so they're not priorities at Lakeview. Then we do have at one of the sites, Performing Arts Center and a lap pool must be a priority at one or the other. But for just Lakeview, we have it as a lake activity focus. The existing pool is a good size for a general use pool. We're keeping lawn bowling and mini golf and not having the indoor spa, but making an outdoor spa instead.
Sorry.
Yes.
Just clarifying question, are we assuming that Hillside Park remains as is?
The what?
The Hillside Park?
The walking paths and
Yeah, the walking paths.
Where the gazebo is?
Gazebo.
currently,
Yes.
is that a priority?
It's more than a priority.
Yes, you know, so that's really an awesome area. I was assuming that that'd be retained, folks. It's very unique and wonderful. Yes. Okay, let's put that down. Yeah, I wasn't gonna build over it.
Is that still the same zoning area?
It's not on your property.
One in every crowd.
Comes under a health facility.
Do you get any sleep at all?
Yes.
I've got a question. Is it cheaper to keep the 4 tennis courts at Lakeview and take the 2 out at Mountain View and add more pickleball courts at Mountain View? Or would it be cheaper to tear out the tennis courts and get rid of them at Mountain View and put something else in and keep everything the way that we have? Is it better to think about shifting something, or?
So what's cheaper? It depends on what you put there.
Well, you
So-
got the 4 already at Lakeview. If you just resurface them or fix them or patch, whatever you got to do to them, it's got to be cheaper than anything else.
I think that the tennis courts at Mountain View are going to be adjusted, okay? But the idea would be that if you did not have to do tennis courts at Mountain View, that would be good, because there are some trade-offs in terms of the land use that require us to move those tennis courts. They cannot stay where they are. That's the answer.
So the tennis courts, what
Well,
you're saying?
everything can stay everywhere, but right now, I'm not thinking that's optimal.
Okay. So I had an idea.
So hold on.
Yeah, okay.
So hold on. So then, could we have an adjustment that said at Mountain View, there could be an option where those tennis courts are not retained, if the 4 courts are retained at Lakeview.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a different way to look at it.
No, it's a fantastic option.
And then you could add a couple more pickleball courts if you had to.
Well, and the tennis court, or tennis club and the pickleball club have talked about that. And I think the tennis community, we speak for both the clubs and the community at large. So we have to keep that in mind. But I like the idea of having diversity in more than one place, more than 2 places. But that idea of having the tennis courts resurfaced and nice at Lakeview in that nice facility, we could live with that if to give up the Mountain View tennis courts for pickleball courts.
Okay, so what we're saying is there's going to be one adjustment, and the idea would be that the tennis, no, I put it with these options. There's an option of no tennis at Mountain View if the 4 courts are retained at Lakeview.
Right.
Are you comfortable with that, folks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a very good option. Okay. Okay, very good. Any other general things? We're going to go on to a floor plan. Yes?
I don't think lawn bowling at Lakeview is essential.
Oh, Lord.
Were you trying to get some reaction? I don't think there's anything to throw. Okay. Okay.
Where it says 45 courts, I'm on the subject of pickleball for 500 category.
It's 1,000.
One of the constraints that we have is noise. And my thought is that any location that we put it at, and let's take Mountain View as an example, we said we could go from 7 to 14. But I'm not sure that you could add more than that without making the noise so difficult for the residents to sit around it. So I think there's a real constraint to the number of outdoor pickleball courts because of noise.
That's the indoors. But I also think, I like your idea about the fact that you especially can look down the road to enclose and have climatized, so we have a wall in there. Because
That's the wow.
there are people, that's the wow factor. Who said that? That's the wow factor.
And it stops the noise.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It just costs.
Okay, so what we would do, just again in the long term, folks, the idea would be typically right now, pickleball is trending in Arizona, especially in the valley, to be conditioned because of what you're talking about. Not everywhere, but there are places that are trending like that. So when we lay it out, we would plan it so that it could allow for construction of a building around it, even if you don't do it now. The key thing is to plan for future optimization. Make sense?
Yes, makes sense.
Okay? And so what you might do is decide, for instance, if you can't do all of them, to enclose the ones that are closest to your property line first. So the ones that are not enclosed are the ones that are more in the center of your property. Okay? Make sense? Okay. All right, can we bring up the floor plan?
Which floor plan?
It's,
The circle.
yeah.
Oh, there we are. Okay, so let's talk about the circle. So there's a lot of characteristics about this building that are actually quite good, folks, okay? So I know you're living with constraints. The characteristics that are good is kind of a continuous view of a center feature and the potential for the openness to the lake, which is in fact not done with the current building, okay? So the key things that are happening here is that this dimension is extremely problematic for any sort of real activity that's not like an office, right? Including meeting. It's a very awkward proportion for meeting and for the fitness, okay? And then the second thing is that the condition is like almost original, and so all the facilities in here, like the restroom, showers, etc., that all needs major upgrade, right? As a commitment to the facility. Would you agree with that in general?
Yes.
Okay. So the one thing that, again, I'm going to go to is that where we can find uses for existing structures that don't need to start over, it's very, very beneficial cost-wise in the long run, okay? So we can make some fundamental modifications to this project without getting rid of it, okay? And so what I'd like to talk about is the priorities for the weaknesses in the actual use of the spaces in this existing building, just like we're talking about the overall site uses, so that we can evaluate now what is the optimum approach to this building. And I'm not going to tell you that we won't consider removing it, but again, in the big picture, like unless you have like a ton of money, right? If we can do things that retain some aspect of spaces, it is always more cost effective in the long run. Does that make sense? Okay, so then, did you have a comment? No. Okay, so then let's take a look at the key areas, right? One is the, this flex, is that the workout area?
No, it's office space.
That's office?
Yeah.
The indoor spa we already talked about.
Where it says billiards is fitness, I believe.
This is the fitness?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so is a fitness space a priority for Lakeview site?
Yes.
Priority for every sector.
Yes, for every sector.
All right, so then the fitness center, should it be about double the size of what you guys have right now? Proportionally, just proportionally. About? Okay. Yeah, so right now there's a lot of issues with that, including, daylight and, fresh air and things like that, folks, okay? So let's say that's one of the priorities for facility change, right? Second, so I'm gonna take a risk, okay? So you do not have like a eatery at Lakeview. But what an awesome place. Like, if someone could come, and you can stop me anytime and say that's not the mission, would there be any potential where you might want to have someone be able to have coffee? Or should we have like a place where there could be
Like a digital cafe?
some sort of a cafe, or some place where people, or maybe like a major, if it's not going to be a retail establishment, it could be a place where there's amazing digital food vending that occurs from a machine that if you haven't experienced it, I'm always shocked. I never buy it just because I'm always like, okay, really? But there's amazing options for that. So my question is, that is not currently a function at Lakeview, but it's such an amazing magnet, I think. Would that be something that should be maybe considered?
Yes.
Yes.
We have a cafe at George's in the bowling alley. Just a cautionary note, if we do some sort of food service in this building, we might run afoul of the lease conditions for that space.
Okay, then what if it was vending?
We've tried to do that at the bowling alley and ran into some issues there.
We solved that problem by moving George's over into the Lake building.
Yeah, that's a good enough.
Not as is.
George's is the restaurant.
There you go, Norm.
Okay, so then let me ask you this then, okay? In the long run, what we can do is there something that could be like a community space that opens to the lake?
Yep.
So instead of having a second floor narrow meeting space, in fact, there's more of a generalized open space that could have meetings. You could, bring your lunch there, you could meet up there, something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
That'd be great. Yeah.
You've got to use the lake as a marketing technique. It's been a crime to keep it hidden for 70 years. So you got to, whatever you can do, we can do to make use of the view of that lake ought to be done.
Okay, so do you agree with what I'm saying so far?
Did it sound like I disagreed?
Yes.
I see a first floor terrace out to the lake, a second floor terrace out to the lake, and a sky deck on top for evening, sunsets, moon, see this
And
sunrise.
what?
I think he just took your job.
That's my vision.
Okay.
Over the lake,
Okay.
over the lake.
And so the question I have is, what is the need for small meeting rooms at this facility? Can we remove those?
Yes.
Okay. Is that, are you all in agreement with that?
There's a lot of people that play cards at that second level in those rooms over there.
So you can play cards in a gathering space?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, it'd be nice.
Yeah, yes.
By small meeting rooms, are you talking about the social halls?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're more than small meeting rooms.
Yeah.
Oh, she meant
On the second floor.
They're at the
So these are what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So,
That's not a small meeting room.
That's huge.
well,
It's narrow.
it's an awkward proportion.
That's my argument on the whole building. It's all
Okay, agreed. So for me, this is not really a large meeting room. It's a space that makes it very difficult to have a large meeting. Okay?
Absolutely.
So my question is there, we talked about the fact that a large meeting gathering space is important here. If we have that, do we need anything that is of a scale where this can be small, like it is right now? Is there any small meeting room need? Okay.
I guess one of the things I noticed when I walked into that room is that the windows are about the size of
A car window.
the little
Prison.
the best view
Correct.
in the entire community.
But that's clearly a major improvement that can be done to this building. I mean, that it doesn't, you would never know that it was on this wonderful lake view.
No,
It's
you
called
never know.
Lakeview, don't forget. It's
No.
actually called Lakeview.
Is it called Lakeview?
It's not a lake.
No, I agree. But folks, this structure is not of the kind where I have to take it down to make those major improvements. Okay?
Can you actually build a third floor on that side of it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, we would do new structure and stuff like that, but yeah, totally it's not possible. Okay? It would be, all new elevators and stairs. It would be pretty significant. Okay. All right, so I think those are the key things. I think the other key thing is that the current state of the restrooms and showers is very bad. Okay? So I would think would you agree that the renovation upgrade of the showers and restrooms, whether it's a replacement or renovation, is important
Yes.
for Lakeview?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so no offices.
Guess I just lost my office.
Yeah. Okay. I think those are the key things. Is there still administrative offices at Lakeview?
A whole bunch.
Yes.
Okay. Is that going to stay?
Yes.
Well, we could get rid of that.
No more theater.
Is that here?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yes, that's offices and also.
Plus up where the,
Up in the corner.
Let Kevin
Straight across.
Kevin,
Give it to Kevin and he'll show you.
Give Kevin this pointer.
This is billiards.
That's an old drawing.
this is me,
Can we write it on here?
this is accounting, cardholder services, and then corporate offices and boardrooms over here.
That's one we can get rid of.
Okay, so
That's on the second floor.
So this is office.
this is corporate, that's
This is
corporate offices
up in
and-
here.
and boardroom. You want to use a color?
Those can be moved.
That's one good thing about offices.
Okay, so corporate offices, and what does that mean?
This
What
is
like the
cardholder
recreation-
services,
Cardholder services.
Accounting, finance,
Cardholder
HR,
services.
Of Recreation Centers
Member
of City
services.
Incorporated?
Yes.
It's their main office?
corporate headquarters.
Doesn't everybody put offices on the lake?
No.
If you like your employees.
this is accounting,
Okay, so folks,
accounting,
okay, so folks,
Pickleball court.
so folks, would there be?
human resources.
HR. Just HR.
Okay. Would there be an acceptable option for a temporary location for the corporate offices if there was major construction done on this building?
Absolutely.
Where would they go?
I don't know yet, okay? But I'm just saying, okay? So the issue about that is this is the one place where there's, 9 to 5, right?
I know, it probably could be placed somewhere, but maybe not as conveniently next to each other.
No, there would be
Part of it here, part of
compromises.
it there.
There would be compromises. It's not a ton of square footage, okay? Do have a couple of options. But would they be open to that in your mind?
Yes.
Kevin?
It's obvious.
We don't have to be at the lake, but we need decent office space. That's the requirement.
Okay,
Somewhere to be productive.
okay. Somewhere, yes.
One thing I'm very strong proponent of is we need the visitor center there.
Okay, what is the visitor center?
New perspective buyers.
Marketing.
Come to see what they want.
Is there a visitor center protocol right now, a precedent for that?
At Bell Center.
It's a bell.
Can someone send me the plan for it? Is it like a leasing office?
It's a small office where
It's like a small office at one of our
It's not like a lease. You just can ask questions.
No, I'm just asking size, It's like a small office, it's not,
Right.
How big is it, John?
there's 2 private offices in a open area.
2 private offices in a lobby kind of area, small lobby.
30 by 30, he said?
That's not small. Okay,
Max,
Okay, fine.
20 by 20.
okay.
10 by 10.
So 2 small offices and a small kind of seating area, right?
Grading. Lobby.
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 Small lobby.
I just wondered if you could bring up the website, we could show you where the visitor centers.
Send you the floor plans for it.
Okay, interesting. So right now, what we're thinking is that building new construction for the offices necessarily maybe is not a great idea, right? Because do you like the location where you are at Lakeview?
There is not a single office or area that has any view of the lake here. So we could be anywhere. I don't have a window.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
It's a dungeon,
Yeah, it's a dungeon.
This circle, by and large, is underground. So none of the space here has any kind of view out. It's all up on the 2nd floor, and even that is generally windowless.
Saves a lot of money on windows.
Yes.
Yeah, but,
Window cleaning.
I mean, you could have had windows on the other side.
A lot of them, the issue is that walkway between the office area and the pool, where you would think, hey, it'd be nice to have a view out into the pool, you've got the shade awnings that generally block that view. So there's no taking advantage of either pool view or lake view from any of the office space.
Okay. So right now, what I'm hearing though, is that they could be temporary or permanently relocated,
Sure.
correct? You could be temporarily relocated during construction. Makes sense? What else did I miss?
Free up the space.
Okay, so here's where we are. Okay, guys, everybody. We're going to not do anything at Lakeview, and all the money's going to Mountain View. Yeah, I can't talk like that because I'm recording.
No.
I keep-
There's no humor here.
Sorry. Okay. So
We get that, but there's no humor.
we're going to look at the lake focus for Lakeview. We're going to say the existing pool is adequate for general use. The showers and restrooms need major upgrades or replacement to be current. The community space should be added that overlooks the lake. We should consider multiple levels for exterior access and views to the lake. Lawn bowling will be retained, mini golf will be retained, an outdoor spa is desired to be added, indoor spa is not required, and a fitness center should be major improved to have the appropriate clearances and space for modern equipment. And then the auditorium performance building is to be located either at Lakeview or Mountain View in the sizes we're talking about here at a minimum. Okay? And then pickleball can be focused at Mountain View, and tennis can be 4 courts at Lakeview. Okay. Folks,
That's
this is...
not a final decision.
No, not final.
But folks, you have made a lot of very good overall evaluations today that are very important for us to appropriately look at how can the sites be used, okay? So then, are there any other general comments or other statements? Yes.
You cannot overemphasize the interaction of the lake. I mean, no matter what you come up with, it's not going to be too much. That lake has to be utilized for the marketing of this community.
Agrees. Yes.
We can take this as a sidebar, but I'm curious what the zoning differences are and the complication factor that introduces to plans for this. I just found out yesterday about that zoning, the difference in the zoning. What does that mean from a planning standpoint?
Well, anything is resolvable, and we can change properties, et cetera, like that. What we're trying to do is simplify it. And where we can, because the bowling is an existing facility, and you're going to keep the facility, and we can do better with the parking in here, okay? The parking is not well laid out. So there's ways to optimize this without having to start over here and do a lot of time. So part of it is to simplify the process in terms of approval and county review. That's really the key thing that I'm looking at in terms of reality.
Does the split zoning across the tennis courts there, does that prevent us or make it more difficult to do something with that area?
The tennis courts work well here.
But they're split, right? Half of them?
Matter.
Okay.
You're the single owner. So again, as the same owner, you can cross a property line. Like you can even, in fact, build a building across your property line. I highly discourage that, okay? I have plenty of past clients that have this situation, folks, but I think right now for your project, we are not in that situation. We do not have to do a scheme where we have to cross this property boundary because this property actually can help us on parking quite a bit overall because you own them both.
So just FYI, that little gray building right there, I would put that into play as well. That's highly underutilized space right there. It used to be the vintage vehicle club space, which is now down at Grand, and that's right now just being used as storage.
There's a lot of area there too.
Yeah, if you go to the overhead view, you'll see it. Go to your overhead view, you'll see it better.
Okay.
And then everybody else will see it.
Okay, we'll move
It's there,
here. So this can be removed.
There.
Okay,
right there.
So there's 2 buildings.
wait for her.
This can be removed.
No.
So
Marley,
we have a warehouse building here
Yeah.
where we unfortunately currently have our IT environment, which is going to be going over here. And then this is the vintage vehicle space here, which again is
It's vacant.
it's being used for storage right now.
Okay, so, thank you. Okay, so here's the other thing, folks. One of the key things that we're going to have to do, depending on what the decision is at the end of September, is there has to be an actual full evaluation of existing buildings, et cetera. Okay, this is just a high-level site use evaluation, right? Then based on the goals, we would have to go in and evaluate buildings, appropriateness, facilities, et cetera. Okay? Yes?
I thought on the very first slide where you showed the R2 and the C6 or whatever, there was a chunk that was not included.
Correct. It's
Way
not,
back.
it's not that it's not included, it goes around the building. You want to show that?
2 tennis courts.
I think it goes around that building, guys.
There.
Right there.
Yeah. That's the building.
That's okay?
So this is the old
Yeah.
vintage vehicle
Yeah.
That's
building.
all we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you're asking me that's okay, what are you asking me?
I don't know. I guess
Okay, so folks, when there's a property line, I have a setback requirement. So if I keep the building, I don't have to make it compliant. If I take the building, I can't build anything there that's useful. That's the short answer.
But it could be parking.
But it could be parking.
But you can modify the parking.
I can renovate it.
You can rent it.
anything there?
No, I can build, but I have to respect the property lines, or I have to go get special conditions from the county. And the key thing is, when you want to get all those variances, you just want to limit the variances you want to have, that's all.
That just takes
Okay.
time,
Yeah. Did I answer your question?
That's kind of what I meant.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Any other general comments? You have been extremely helpful today. Any other general comments or questions?
Next week?
So next week, we're going to have our preliminary site evaluation, locating fit, just in terms of diagrams, folks. And I hope you appreciate, this is moving very quickly. So thank you for your commitment, these 2 hours today and last week. We will have the preliminary pass at a site use diagram for the two, after which we will have a short amount of time to make a revision that will then go to the board for this committee's initial assessment about site use priorities.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I just make one closing comment? I want to thank everybody for all of the work that they've done over the summer. You know, I know this is not a time that is ideal to be in beautiful Arizona, and you really committed your time and committed your full effort to it. I appreciate it. I know the community does.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Let's get rid of that lawn mowing.
This is a copyrighted production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.